The NCAA is considering changing its rules to allow college athletes to earn money off of their talent. NCAA President Mark Emmert is pushing for the organization to approve the change by July 1st. The new proposal would allow student athletes to be paid by private companies for the use of their name, image, and likeness. It would also let players earn money through ads on their social media accounts. Several states have already passed laws allowing this to happen. I want to bring in Dennis Dodd. He is a senior writer at CBS Sports. Dennis, this is tremendous. This has been one of the biggest debates in college sports for the longest of times. What has changed now that's prompted Mark Emmert to push for this change?
Alana, basically the NCAA has been backed into a corner. There are now 5 states that have their own standing NIL laws due to go into effect July 1st. The NCAA wants and needs Congress's help to implement its version of NIL, but there's no evidence that that's going to come anytime soon. It might in the future. Meanwhile, the NCAA needs some sort of coverage on this. So I think what we're going to see is they're going to implement their version of NIL. But remember this, in the states that have passed these laws, which are much more progressive than anything the NCAA has put forward, those state laws will supersede whatever the NCAA has. So it's going to be a bit of a wild, wild west out there.
Is that July 1st deadline actually realistic?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The July 1st deadline in 5 states, Florida, Mississippi, Missouri, Alabama. I think there's a 5th one out there. This legislation has been rushed into effect by these states. Basically, in these states where these legislators don't want their athletes to be left behind in being able to get these NIL benefits. And those benefits include, I'm sure you've read about them, endorsement deals, autographs, social media, stuff we haven't even thought of yet. There's a pair of twins that play basketball at Fresno State whose social media alone is already being valued at $500,000. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about.
Oh. That's major money. And as you know, Dennis, advocates have been pushing for player compensation for decades. Remind our viewers what critics have said about this change and why there's been hesitation to do so.
Well, the hesitation's been on the NCAA's part. This could have been avoided 15 years ago when Ed O'Bannon sued the NCAA in that famous case where his image was used on the front of a basketball game. And, he wasn't compensated for it. They didn't do it. We're here today because of this. The NCAA hasn't been progressive. They were urged to do it. But their legal stance, their strategy has been litigate. And so here we are a month or 2 before the July 1st deadline. And the NCAA, as I said before, is backed into a corner having to implement rules that it was going to wait and do in January. But the Department of Justice had problems with it. That was under the Trump administration. That is now carried over to the Biden Department of Justice. And we've got no resolution from that either. So the NCAA is just going to go forward on this.
You're mentioning the government's role in all this, and some members of the NCAA's board have been pushing Congress to pass federal standards for this new rule. Talk to us about why they want it to come from a federal standpoint, and what is the latest coming from Capitol Hill?
Well, because if the NCAA even hints at capping compensation, which its current legislation does, it's kind of a gray area if you read it, then here we go again with lawsuits, because that's how we started, and that's what NIL is. It's to make the student as much a part of the campus life as a normal student as possible. And the normal student can create his own YouTube channel. He can do endorsements. He can have his own separate company if he wants to. And that's what this is all about. So it became a Congress thing because the NCAA was out of touch on this. You have to understand that for decades, they defended their right to defend amateurism. We don't need federal intervention. Now, because they dug their feet, they're actively seeking congressional help in implementing this, getting it maybe an antitrust exemption, so they couldn't be sued on some of this. But what critics have said is be careful what you wish for, because when Congress gets involved, they may not stop there. They may cap, say coaches. That could be included in a bill like this. The problem right now is there's nothing on the front burner. There's a lot of talk, there's a lot of bills, but nothing in this Congress that's going to be implemented, it looks like, before July 1st. And that's why you're seeing the action by Emmert.
All right, Dennis, thank you so much for joining us.
You bet.